Hey everyone, today we're diving into something that's become absolutely critical in modern business, experimentation. It's really the secret sauce, right? It's how you stop guessing what works and start knowing what works, using actual data to make your big decisions. So let's get right into it.
All right, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll talk about why experimenting isn't just a nice-to-have anymore, it's essential. Then, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of A/B testing, one of the most popular methods out there. From there, we'll look at how you actually prove a hypothesis. And then, we'll talk about some super clever ways to test ideas before you even build them. And we'll wrap it all up by getting you thinking about your very next experiment.
So why is everyone talking about this? Well, in a world that changes as fast as ours does, the ability to test, learn, and adapt on the fly, it's not a luxury anymore. It's become a core survival skill for any company, big or small.
I mean, look at this quote. It's not trying to be subtle, is it? It really highlights just how high the stakes are. Companies that just keep relying on old assumptions without ever testing them are taking a massive risk. They're basically waiting to be left in the dust by competitors who are out there constantly learning and adapting.
And here's the bottom line. Building a culture of experimentation gives you these huge advantages. You get to explore all sorts of different ideas without betting the farm on any single one. And because you've already tested them, the ideas that you do move forward with have a way, way higher chance of actually working out in the real world. Plus, in the digital world we live in now, it's never been easier or cheaper to get started.
Okay, so if experimenting is so important, how do you actually do it? Well, one of the most common and really powerful tools in the toolbox is something called an A/B test. An A/B test, at its heart, is super simple. It's just a way to compare two versions of something to see which one performs better. So you could be comparing a new web page layout, that's your option B, against your current one, option A. Or maybe you're comparing two different fabrics for a new dress. The key is that you randomly show some people version A and other people version B. It's like a head-to-head competition where cold, hard data gets to pick the winner. No opinions, just facts.
But what does performs better actually mean? That's where your metrics come in. And this is so important. Before you run any test, you have to decide exactly what you're going to measure. You could test the new Buy Now button color that gets way more clicks. But if those clicks don't lead to more sales, who cares? You've just optimized for the wrong thing. Your metric has to line up with your real business goal. Without that, your results are pretty much meaningless.
All right, so you've run your test, you've got your data. But how do you know if the difference you're seeing is real or if it was just a random fluke? This is where we have to get just a little bit scientific to make sure we're not fooling ourselves.
The official process for this is called hypothesis testing, and it's got three main steps. First, you create something called a null hypothesis. Then you establish your alternative hypothesis, and finally, you use all your data to try and reject the null. Now, I know that sounds a little weird and kind of backward, but let's break down what it actually means. And this slide lays it out perfectly. The null hypothesis is basically the default boring assumption. It says, nope, nothing to see here. The change we made had zero effect. The alternative hypothesis, on the other hand, is what you're actually hoping is true, that there is a real, meaningful difference because of the change you made. So, and this is the key part, your goal isn't really to prove your idea is right directly. Your mission is to gather so much compelling evidence that you can confidently throw out the null hypothesis. You want to prove that the no difference idea is false. And by rejecting that, you get to accept the alternative, that your change actually did matter. Okay, this all sounds great for small things, like changing a button color. But what about really big, new ideas? You don't want to spend a year and a ton of money building a whole new product just to find out that nobody actually wants it. Luckily, there are some really clever ways to test the core concept first, with way less risk. First up, you've got something called a painted door test. Imagine you add a button to your website for a brand new feature that doesn't exist yet. When a user clicks it, you just show a little coming soon message. But, and here's the magic, you count that click. Those clicks tell you if people are actually interested. Or think of a coffee shop. They could put up a sign for a new nitro cold brew with a sign-up sheet. If 100 people sign up, they know it's probably worth buying the fancy machine. It's a test of demand, not function. Now, a step up from that is the minimum viable product, or MVP.
This is more than just a button. It's a real working, but very, very simple version of your product. It has just enough features to solve one core problem for your first users. The goal isn't to make it perfect. The goal is to get it into people's hands and get real feedback on your core idea as fast as you possibly can.
So what makes a good MVP? Well, there are three main things to think about. First, value. It has to actually do something useful for the user. Second, time. It needs to be interesting enough that people will give it a real try. And third, substance. There has to be enough there for you to get meaningful feedback that you can actually use. A great way to think about it is to ask yourself, what is the simplest thing I can build that solves one real problem for one type of person?
The most famous example of this is probably Dropbox. Before they built their incredibly complex file syncing service, they just made a simple video that showed how it would work. Tens of thousands of people signed up for the waitlist. They proved they had a huge market before writing a single line of production code. Another great one is Zappos. The founder didn't build a giant warehouse. He just took pictures of shoes at local stores, posted them online, and when an order came in, he literally ran to the store, bought the shoes, and shipped them himself. Both were incredibly low-cost ways to prove a massive business idea was viable.
So, we've covered the why, the how, and some pretty cool ways to test ideas, both big and small. Now, let's just pull this all together and think about what it means for you.
At the end of the day, the big takeaway is this. Experimentation is just a system for learning faster than everyone else. It lets you replace, "I think this will work," with "the data shows this works." It's about making a lot of small, smart bets so you can find the big wins, learn quickly from the things that don't work, and then double down on what does, all before you make a huge commitment of time and money.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. Every single business, every project, every team is running on a bunch of core assumptions. Our customers want this feature. This email subject line is the best one. This change will make things more efficient. So I'll leave you with this one question to chew on. What is one of those big assumptions in your world that you could design a small, simple experiment to test tomorrow?